Hello and welcome back to the Star Family Wisdom podcast. It's so good to be here with you today. I'm Jenna, the founder of Star Family Wisdom and also a former global vice president for Whole Foods Market. In today's episode, I'm talking with our sacred geometry instructor, Nadi Hana. And in our last episode, if you didn't catch it, check it out. You can find the link below. I talk about some of my personal experiences with sacred geometry and getting activated by Nadi's crop circle class. So today I talk with Nadi about her experiences with sacred geometry and what led her to this really extraordinary path where her purpose and mission is now to activate others with the sacred geometry. So Nadi left a career in mental health and leaped into a very new, very different reality years ago, which has now led her to being a sacred geometry teacher and instructor. So we talk all about what happens with sacred geometry and why it's so powerful. And we talk about crop circles as well, and how the crop circle formations are kind of like the second coming of Christ. Okay, that might sound a little controversial, but what I'm talking about there is consciousness. And in this episode, you'll actually see the moment where I received a download after staring at the crop circles and sacred geometry, this download about Christ consciousness and how the crop circles and the sacred geometry that they contain help bring us back into that state of Christ consciousness, which is just an aligned state of consciousness. It's an aligned state of being where we are more fully connected to our source. We are harmonized in our energy field and in how our brains are operating. And we have aligned ourselves with the divine masculine and divine feminine principles of the universe in a way that allows the right flow and synchronicity and magic to occur. And we start to embody a state of oneness and love as we move into that state of consciousness. And sacred geometry is a tool that can do that for you. So this conversation was super fun. Nadi was on the podcast at the beginning of last season. So if you want to check out that episode, it is also linked below. And you can find Nadi on starfamilywisdom.com. She has an upcoming free masterclass that you can sign up for as well. Check out that link below. And she also has a couple of other classes and her sacred geometry courses that you can find on Star Family Wisdom. If you want to go a little deeper, if you want to begin the process of really transforming and reprogramming yourself, this is one of the ways you can do it. And you can work with Nadi live in class on Zoom or get pre-recorded classes that you can do at home on your own. So we want you to have these transformational tools because they've been so powerful for us on our journey, and they're so complementary to work with. No matter what modalities, spiritual practice you're connected with, these are additional tools to have in your tool belt. So we want to give those to you in this conversation. And if you're not watching on YouTube, jump over to YouTube because you're going to see the crop circles and the geometry in the background. And just by being with the geometry and looking at it for 45 minutes or however long this is, you're going to start to experience some transformation, even if you're not totally conscious of it yet. So Nadi explains more about that in the episode. So enjoy this conversation with Nadi Hana, and don't forget to subscribe, like, help this channel grow, and make sure you don't miss any of our videos as they come out. We're producing a lot this year and have some really cool conversations coming up. So I'll see you on the other side. Enjoy this episode. I know it's like obstacle after obstacle, but the geometry is going to help us harmonize.
Geometry prevails.
Geometry for the win.
Yeah. Do you remember the dude? What was the movie? I can't remember. The Dude Abides. Anyway, you're not going to remember.
Oh. Oh my gosh, what was that movie? Yeah,
I
I know what
know.
you're
Now
talking
I'm not
about.
going to get it. That's too
Geometry,
bad.
geometry, help us. That's a very third dimensional kind of matrix movie. So maybe the geometry is like, no, that's out of here. You're done with
Yeah. Well, I always just like to say the geometry abides, but it's more I abide by.
it. Right.
Anyway, oh my gosh, we made it. All
We
right.
made it. So, yeah, in our last episode, I shared with the audience some of my personal experiences with geometry and transformation and how you got me on the path of this, more, I'd say, just expanded transformation that's possible with the geometry and what you were just saying about you abiding, by the geometry. I want to maybe just start with your crop circle activation because it's clear that once someone gets activated with the geometry, the universe just starts to pull them in the right direction, right? Like you're abiding by the divine plan. The universe is like, here's the plan, you're going to follow it. So you got really activated with crop circles and you are now doing sacred geometry, teaching everything. Like maybe talk about your background behind you and like how you got to this point.
Hmm. Yes, definitely, definitely cause for reflection and reflection and insight. And I love going back to visit um, how I've gotten to where I am, right? Because it's unusual where I am. Sometimes I reflect on that. Uh, Okay, so I spent a large portion of my adult life as a mental health professional. I was a psychotherapist on an inpatient psychiatric unit for 10 years. So that was significant and also not my lifelong career plan. So I had a wonderful time. It was amazing to be with people in transition, and then it was time for my transition. So I took a leap of faith. I had no idea what I was going to do. I just know I needed something else. And within a matter of, I would say, weeks, I had exposure to unified physics, namely Nassim Haramein's unified field theory, and he incorporates a lot of sacred geometry into his theory. And so I was introduced to the geometry. I started drawing, and shortly thereafter, I was exposed to all new types of worlds. It was a very expansive time in my life, and I went to a festival, and I was milling around the different tents and merchandise, and I came across a man selling pendants that had crop circles engraved in them, and each crop circle had the date that it was made on the back, so everybody loved them for their birthday, and it was a really cool thing. But I couldn't leave the tent. It was bizarre. I'd never had anything like that. I just stood around. I wasn't even looking at them. It was just like magnetic attraction, and I had no idea. So I went back the next day, and the guy was obviously uncomfortable with offering what he was about to offer. He said, I don't do this, but would you want to tour with me and help me sell these? And, nothing nefarious, no ill intent or anything, but it was the call of the crop circles, right? Like when you start working with them, you start learning the frequency of when they're trying to get your attention.
Mhm.
And he obviously had listened and was of service to them with these pendants. And so I listened as well. And so I mean, that was really radical for me. I had spent 10 years in like a 9 to 5, prescribed day and structured. And okay, I'll go leap with a guy I just met to go sell crop circles. So you can
It's a little
imagine.
out there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very outside my territory.
That would concern your parents, right?
Yeah, but they're not in the, this was a solo ride for sure. But that was really the beginning. And what I would say to that is that I had no idea what was going on. I was simply listening and allowing for the new. And in doing so, I don't even know what was turned on at that point. I felt like I went to go do that, and then I went back home and totally forgot about it for 7 years. Like, didn't even remember that I'd had a crop circle encounter until this one. I saw, yeah, that's hard to see, but this one here, whoa, I saw that in a magazine or something, and I was just like, oh, there's these again. I got completely obsessed. I made an art installment about it. So 2 points there. We often don't know what's happening, and it works in a magical way where it moves at its own pace, where we can integrate the activation. And so now I'm dedicated because they're so powerful, I've learned in my life.
So you took that activation experience that then kind of came back to you 7 years later to this next level of creating art with the crop circles and sacred geometry. And for those who aren't watching on YouTube, jump over to YouTube if you want to see Nadi's background, because we've got a beautiful selection of crop circle photos and a gigantic drawing of a Sri yantra. So I want to talk about the connection between sacred geometry, which the Sri yantra is, beautifully representing, and the crop circles, which is also beautifully representing different aspects of sacred geometry. So how did you go from, reconnecting with the crop circles to then like understanding what sacred geometry is and how it transforms us? Like, what was that connection like for you?
Well, I would like to say that I knew the answer to that, but again, it's so nebulous and what's the word? Ephemeral and esoteric. Like, it's really hard to say, oh yes, I can connect the dots and here's how this influenced this, right? So I can do my best to say that I came across the sacred geometry in unified field theory. Then these things came along, then they went away, and then I started really drawing sacred geometry, right? I just was compelled. It was very much like Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where he's just obsessed with finding his way to the tower, the mashed potatoes, and the whole structure in his basement. Not that far, but I was similarly compelled, and I just drew and drew. And what I can see going back and reflecting is that the geometries are so harmonic. They're so beautifully proportioned that when we're drawing them, we're really entraining our systems into that level of harmony and alignment. And then my guidance was easier to hear. So it was this very gentle process of drawing, aligning, and listening to what came next. And then it was an evolution of sacred geometry, art installments, people seeing the art on the walls, wanting to learn more about it, me learning how to talk about it and starting to teach. Community colleges wanted to hear about it, all sorts of places, because it can take you as far as you want to go in terms of your expansion. And the Sri Yantra, which is this beautiful mandala behind me, really came to me after I had started doing some of the work to align myself. Because I want to say you got to kind of be ready for this technology, if you will. This is ancient wisdom encoded into a mandala form that was used by yogis and sages and sadhus, and thousands of people over the moon before.
It's really interesting you mentioned that, because in the last episode, I reflected on the fact that the first sacred geometry class I took with you was the Sri Yantra class. But I had already been on this healing path, for a while, and been doing lots of energy clearing, had reconnected with crop circles. So there was like this steady progression where I wasn't ready for the Sri Yantra until that point. And then the things that started to happen with the Sri Yantra were just like really interesting, like how things just started to unfold. It ended up on my vision boards. There's crop circles in my ancestor altar now, right?
Yep, they just they find their way because, of course, the geometry and the crop circles that are based in geometry are working with the 95% of the subconscious mind that is ruling our waking reality, right? So it's speaking with symbolism to the parts of us that are unconscious. And so we don't really know why we're surrounding ourselves with them. We just know that we are, and that it's important on some level that we don't really even get to know about. But again, it's like the listening, right? We learn how to listen to the guidance, and we learn how to listen to what's important to be around us and surround ourselves with, even if we don't understand it. And I think that's a skill of the spiritual path, is that trust and that faith that things show up, and they're showing up to help us, you know.
And allowing the energetic, non-physical aspect of ourselves to realign, right? There's so much we can't see. There's so much we can't perceive, you know, as our human selves right now. And it does require that trust, like you said. That's a great point. Yeah. I want to ask you a little bit about how people experience crop circles. So you teach about crop circles, and you hold classes where people can come and just learn all of the info, you know, behind crop circles. But there's also like that experiential component that you're talking about with sacred geometry. So what are some of the, I guess, like experiences or aspects of your class that have been, you know, most transformative? Like what happens in those classes?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know you can speak to that directly, because we had, I did the presentation for you to kind of prep and say, hey, is this making, you know, how does this look? And you had a really powerful experience sitting and watching the presentation. So the thing that is remarkable is we're talking about non-local technology, right? That's, you know, with the genuine crop circles, there's information encoded into the formations that's designed to activate our DNA, that's designed to bring humanity online with our higher levels of consciousness and multidimensional selves. So lots of times, you know, you don't have to be in a crop circle to have profound experiences. So, and I've had a bunch with a lot of people doing these over the years. One of the ones that stood out the most to me is you hear a lot of stories over time in the fields in Southern England or wherever, where people have spontaneous remissions and healings of chronic illnesses or, you know, acute distress. And we had that, like at one of our classes, I had this woman who had 2 canes, right? Like 2 walking canes, and the event was up about 8 steps. And she, like, it took her everything to get up those steps. She was in agony, but absolutely, for whatever reason, called to come to that class. She left without the canes, walked out of there totally like fine and enthused and ready to work with the crop circles. So it's advanced stuff. It happens wherever you are, and all you have to do is stare at them, because they're so advanced. They're designed to interface with that subconscious aspect of our reality and support the integration, right? Support our ability to heal, to bring out our innate abilities that we've been really cut off from.
Wow.
That's kind of the number.
That's incredible. I forgot about that story. I like always remember the story of the woman who connected with her deceased husband, but I totally forgot about the big healing. I was getting chills the whole time you were talking about that. And I had this like message come through at the very end of you talking about that is like the second coming of Christ is the consciousness that crop circles and sacred geometry helps us embody. Like the second coming of Christ is crop circles.
I never framed it that way. Yeah, I'll use that in a marketing promo. That's great. That's great.
Oh, see what happens when we start working with them. They're here on the screen with us. Nadi has the Sri Yantra, and we're just connected in. As I want to talk about the Sri Yantra for a moment, just to kind of back up and give the Sri Yantra the honor that it is due. So you talked about it being, you know, this ancient mandala, but you have 40 something say Sri Yantras in your house. Is that right?
Almost 30. Yeah, that I've drawn. Yeah.
Okay, so there's room for more, clearly. So why is this tree yantra so important? Like, why have you connected with it so much, and what can people experience when they work with that geometry specifically?
Mhm. Well, that's again, I can give you the details that I've studied with the Shri, right? The 3D interpretations of why the shape is so powerful. But again, to say how it's worked in my system is really, I can't pinpoint it. I simply know that it is part of one of the tools in my tool chest that is creating an amazing life, right? So one of the larger tools, apparently, because I have 30 of them that I've, needed to draw, and that's over a period of like 4 or 5 years. But I was drawing them, and then they would just be like in the notebooks. And one day I, kind of, when you're communicating with the geometry and you start to listen to the frequencies of how it communicates, all of them were like, we're doing no good in the notebooks, please put us up in the house. So they're everywhere. And in part because they are working psychically, they're working subtly and quietly. And again, I don't know quite how. It's the same thing as when I started. It's like, I just know I like to have these around, and I know that my abilities are expanding. I know that my multidimensional self is coming online. And I'll tell you, I know very little of it, right? Comparatively, these shapes are lifelong studies, because every single aspect that you can see, like the boundary, which is the Bupura, the square gates, if you will, represent more mundane elements of the 3D reality, the 4 directions, and they are considered the gates in how you get into the 16 petals, and then the 8 petals, and then the 9 asymmetrical triangles that create 43 individual triangles. And every single petal, every single triangle represents some aspect of the human experience, whether it's divine, mundane, physicality. And you can meditate on any one of those aspects. And then the bindu in the center point, right? The central focus. And the idea is with the Shri is that as you move from the outside inward, you are transcending the limitations of the 3rd dimensional reality. And so it's extremely powerful. It's like an all-in-one package. And when I first saw it, what it did was essentially, if you're looking at the triangles, it like opened in and created this portal into, I don't even know where, I don't know how far I went. But what I feel is honestly that this is a portal home, and I keep trying to get home. That's what I think. And that's my 5-minute synopsis, which, for a mandala that's thousands of years old is a little ridiculous, but it's worth at least mentioning.
Another thing I love about it that you've mentioned in class before is how it also I think has more of a feminine kind of projection of energy. So the way the triangles are positioned, you have more that are open to the top, I believe. And so you get this like connection to the divine feminine energy of creation. And if we're not aligned to the divine feminine flow of how energy is supposed to, move in our universe and our bodies, we can't receive like the life that we want. We can't receive from the universe because the divine feminine like aspects of ourself are those receptive aspects. So it kind of feels like the Sri Yantra moves us into that more like receptive flow state.
Yeah. Right. And that reminds me that it is a predominantly sort of divine feminine energy, as you're saying, because the 9 interlocking triangles, they're asymmetrical, and there's 5 downward facing triangles which form like a receptive geometry, and then there's 9 upward facing triangles which are like that active masculine activating energy, right? So you have this balance of the male energies and the female energies, but there are 5 downward facing triangles and only 4 upward facing triangles, which makes it a predominantly feminine and female energy. And Lakshmi, this is the symbol in the mandala for Lakshmi, who is the goddess of abundance, the bestower of blessings, the realizer of all wishes. And so supposedly you can work with the Shri to make your dreams and wishes and desires come true. And I believe in that. And of course, what we believe is what we manifest. So, but that's based in technical explanation as well. It's not just, you know, a choice to believe in divine benevolent prosperity.
Well, and I think we've both experienced the truth of that, right? It's like you do get what you believe in, and the divine benevolent aspect, you know, of the universe, the abundant aspect of the universe is absolutely there for us to experience. It's just a matter of shifting our energy, shifting the geometry in our field so we can align with that. And I love that you mentioned Lakshmi and the goddess of abundance. I got chills as you were talking about that. And it makes me now think about how when I put the Sri Yantra on my vision boards as I was doing my visioning work coming into 2022 last year, how almost, I think pretty much everything on that board that had the Sri Yantra manifested easily, effortlessly.
It's a potent tool, you know, and we've obviously imbued all geometry with all sorts of meaning and interpretation. But if you can let those things go in your program, you know, stop running the program and just kind of work with the pure geometry, you're accessing yourself as the geometries, right? So you're staring at this shape, but you're creating that resonance and that state of coherence because of the balance. And I had a thought a second ago. I think we were talking about Lakshmi. And another thing to completely say the opposite thing of what I was just saying is that all of the Hindu pantheon, right? All of the gods and goddesses are represented in here by their elements and aspects. So there's Lakshmi, there's Ganesha, there's all sorts of Vishnu and Krishna, and all of the symbolism of what they represent in our psyche, in our, you know, cosmology of interpreting our reality. It's all really powerful on every and any level that you choose to work with it. That's not unique. That's true for everything, right? But these have been my tools, and I've taken them really far, and they've taken me really far, which is part of why I like to be on calls like this and talk about it.
Well, and you mentioned the word portal. So I want to pause and talk about that specifically because, you know, you've talked about the aspect of, you know, just bringing harmony to your field and, you know, this aspect of just like healing, you know, that's possible with the geometry. And you mentioned the ability to open a portal to you. What does that mean? And what can be experienced, I guess, by someone beyond just, you know, physical healing? Like what happens when we open portals?
Right. That is a great question for contemplation. I feel like I use that term. I have some sort of Stargate association in my mind, right? Like opening wormholes to other dimensions, which, yes, that's
what I was thinking about. Yeah, I mean, that's true.
That's true. And I think we externalize that phrase, we externalize that interpretation to mean like, oh, I'm traveling the cosmos. But really, I think it's wormholes into our own selves, into our, like, perhaps other timelines that we're living, other parallel realities. Like you start to navigate worlds that we are not familiar with. And you could look at wormholes as neural pathways, right? And the different ways to access your brain and tap into the pineal or the higher capacities that we have. So yes, wormhole to travel the universe, whether you're defining the universe as external or internal, portals, gateways, access points, all of the exciting things that help us open to all of the more that there is. There's so much more than what we've been told, you know? So, yeah.
So
Does that get close to?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and it's so interesting too, because in the last episode, I shared some of my personal experiences, and you are helping to frame some of what I talked about in really similar but different ways, and the geometry is helping us do that, so that people get the fullest kind of explanation and insight, I guess, into our experience with it, which is really cool. And I love that you talked about neural connections and networks and programming, because I think, we don't realize it until we get to that point, of the healing work that's required to become truly harmonious and, activate our supernatural abilities and all that. We don't realize how much programming we're carrying, and how that has, and the neural networks, right, that are created around that programming. And so, I want to maybe just pause and talk about that for a moment, because of your background in mental health and because of what you just talked about. Now, knowing how much more expansive and incredible our reality is, talk, to those who are listening, who are, maybe still stuck in that place of not living the ideal life, right? Stuck in some programming that they know is not theirs, but it's like, how do you make that initial transition, to reforming, the neural networks that need to be reformed? Like, that's a big process. That's a big journey to undertake. What's that been like for you?
Oh, that's like 10 questions in one, but I'll do my best. That's so great. So, I want to add that alongside of my whole journey of working in mental health, taking a leap of faith into a non-sensical reality, right? A very extraordinary reality. I had a spiritual practice. I had a very strong, dedicated daily practice of meditation. And that was coupled with a decade of one-to-one therapy, group therapy, yoga, somatic practices, regressions, journey work, you name it, plant medicine. I've done it all to be getting back to my alignment, and that'll be my lifetime job, right? That's not ever complete. But at one point, I know that I did move from being in a deficit, meaning a triggered reality, a reactionary reality, moving in programs that weren't really conscious, that I had learned, right? And that weren't serving me. So from all that work, I moved kind of out of that reactionary world into a proactive, here's how I want to create my reality world, right? So just to say, it's taken a bunch of work, and it's happened. And like I had said, I had done a tremendous amount of meditation and practice. And what I love about the geometry is drawing it in particular, and this will sound oversimplified, but it's really hard to sit and meditate sometimes. Like, we're not trained to do that, and to just sit and try to quiet the mind. What are you talking about? Like, really out of range on a lot of levels, especially more and more in this rapid fire world and like hyperactive, reality that we're in. And so whether it's the geometry or something else, what I have found about the patterns and the drawing is that you are preoccupying your left brain, which wants to be doing and fixing and focusing and all of this. You're occupying that with the structural drawing, and then your right brain has a little bit more ability to come online and listen and be a little quieter. So whether it's the geometry or anything that occupies the predominant left brain and then allows a little bit more spaciousness, I think that practice has been fundamental to essentially like harmonizing the hemispheres of our brain, right? There's that more neural pathway reconnection.
That is probably one of the best plugs for drawing sacred geometry that I've heard, because I have found that even just looking at it, and using it as a meditative tool can help me get into that meditative state sometimes if I'm struggling with it. But what you talked about with the drawing does something different. Like that just seems to take it to a whole new level.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the geometries are structured, they're predictable, and for me, they're comforting in that. It's not like you're sitting in a canvas and you're like, oh, where's the color going to come from? What am I drawing? You just put the compass on the pencil and you get the same shape, which then lets you launch into wherever you want to go. But it reinforces how important structure can be for our foundation and for our well-being.
Mm.
And anything, the geometry has circles and lines, right? And so you're balancing the divine feminine, the divine masculine, you're bringing it all together. And it's just the most effective tool that I have found that works on the whole system. There's a ton of them out there though, but obviously it was so powerful for me that I just kept going, and it worked, and it still works. And
And I've experienced it too. It's like we offer so many tools, right, to go through your own healing process and transformation. And it's like when you start working with sacred geometry, it can take it to a whole new level. I mean, that's been my experience. I was already deep in my shamanic work and all the things you described, right? That are, I think, all important tools in the tool belt as we're healing and, transforming. But once I found geometry and started to incorporate it into my practices, wow. Some of my ability, I think, to, like you said, even access those other aspects of myself or other lives, that I've lived, those portals, were able to open in different ways that allowed for even deeper healing to occur that I didn't even know needed to happen. So I think I think what you're talking about there is it being this next layer for people who are ready for that next layer. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so gentle, right? It's not like you're walking into a shamanic initiation, which is awesome, but if you are just starting out, that can seem a little overwhelming and like a big leap. And so the drawing is so accessible and so simple and non-threatening, and you're simply aligning without you knowing it. You just, you're drawing. But the reprogramming takes a long time. Well, maybe it doesn't these days, but we're basically like, if you're 40, you're undoing 40 years of programming, right? So patience and compassion with that process, and finding any kind of tool that works, as you're saying. And the geometry is so cool because it's in everything. Any practice you're going to take is going to wind its way to the core with geometry, right? It will be at the basis of everything. Like, you can come to the geometry through psychedelic journeys because people drop the veil and there it is. It's everywhere, right? And shamanic journeying and like mathematics, right? If you get down to square roots, you're going to find the fundamental patterns of the universe, right? Cosmology, music, it's art, it's architecture.
Yeah, yoga is putting our body in the geometry it wants to be in to allow for the right energy flow. Like, it's everything.
Yeah, so why not start from scratch and get right into it? And at the same time, there's lots of modalities. I don't want to be so, rigid. I've used them all, but it's a supportive foundation, and I love it.
Well, there's a reason. There's a reason we're offering your courses on Star Family Wisdom and now your crop circle classes. So maybe just share with the audience before we wrap up, where can people find you? What do you have coming up? How can they work with you in the geometry?
Great. Well, if I forget something, please remind me, because there's a bunch of offerings, and I do offer online and in person, but online is so much more accessible. And so we've got a crop circle class, I believe, the 30th, right? January 30th.
And March 2nd.
As March 2nd. Yeah. And then we'll have more. And so that's crop circles. And I do, it's hard to track. That's with Star Family Wisdom. So you can find that as well as the Sacred Geometry 8-week course, which is both modules that you can take on your own time and self-study, as well as the same material, but live with me, and going through the process. the online modules, the pre-recorded, are awesome to do on your own time, right? It's not always possible to meet up for a scheduled class, but I have to say the potency of doing it together, the potency of group work, the potency of transformation and being witnessed, because that's available with this this art form, this geometry. I'll be doing it for a long time. I mean, I've been leading groups for 18 years and I've incorporated the geometry for the last 8, and I will forever be fascinated by watching the interface with the different realities, the different psyches, and how we can really uplift each other. So that's why we put together this 8-week course. It starts, I don't know,
February 18th, and you have a free masterclass coming up on the 4th. So if anyone's catching this before the 4th, sign up. You can get the links below in the show notes. And again, that's free. It's on the 4th, I think at 1 o'clock Pacific time, where Nadi will talk more about her personal experiences and what you can expect with sacred geometry. We covered a lot today, but there's so much to talk about. So join that if you want to go a little deeper.
Yeah. And I mean, it's endless, right? Also, I have a bunch of like one-off classes that you can find on my website, which is Galactic Rose Geometry. I'm sure the links and all of that stuff are all over the place, but I am devoted to us expanding into our multidimensional consciousness. Like it's really important. You know, you could go so far as to say like our survival depends on it. You know, it depends on us stepping into who we really are in order to change our consciousness and how we live with the planet, live with each other. I mean, it's really important. It's really profound stuff. So I highly recommend jumping into any of the classes or anything. It's time to get online, you know, let's go.
Yeah. It's time to expand, time to reprogram, time to relearn our reality. So that's what we're dedicated to here at Star Family Wisdom. And I hope you all will check out Nadi's classes and join the email list. If you're not on the email list, you'll hear about them that way too. If you're interested in learning more. And we are just so thrilled that the Sri Yantra and Crop Circles could join us today. I want to honor them and thank them for their energy and for being with us. And Nadi, thank you for your time and your energy and being part of Star Family Wisdom. We're so honored to have you.
Oh, yeah, it's my pleasure. And Jenna, thank you so much for all that you're doing in the world, promoting all of the different avenues to reaching our full potential, and all of the people that are doing the work. Like you're really bringing everyone together with the podcast, with the classes and the offerings, and your offerings are so amazing with the journey work and learning about empowering practices and manifestation. And I learned so much. So thank you as well. It's a pleasure.
Thank you everyone for watching. Go meditate with some geometry. That's your homework. Sign up for Nadi's class. That's your second piece of homework. And we'll see you in our next episode. Don't forget to rate and review and like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our future episodes. Follow us on YouTube if you're not there so you can see us on camera, and we'll see you next time on the next episode. Bye for now.